My name is Katie, and at 32 years old, the floorboard beneath me let out a faint creak, but no one inside the study noticed. I stood just outside the doorway, my hand halfway raised to knock, when my father's voice sliced through the air. Calm, cold, measured. "Your sister doesn't deserve a dime," he said flatly. "She's out." The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. My pulse roared so loudly in my ears it drowned out the rest of the world. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect you, you'll know that feeling, the one where your heart doesn't break all at once, it just stops belonging. Inside, Alina didn't protest. She didn't even hesitate. And then, as if to drive the knife in further, I heard Diane, my stepmother, let out a quiet, satisfied hum. I took a small step back, just enough to see through the narrow crack between the door and the frame. Diane sat on the edge of the leather sofa, her teacup balanced delicately in her hand. That same polished, smug expression rested on her face, the tight, self-satisfied smile she wore whenever one of her quiet schemes worked. She looked peaceful, triumphant, as though erasing me from the family wasn't an act of cruelty, but a correction. I closed my eyes and stepped away before they saw me. The walk upstairs felt endless, each step heavier than the last. My body moved, but my mind stayed in that room, hearing my name stripped from my own life. I didn't cry. Not then, not ever for them. I sat down on the edge of the guest bed, opened my laptop, and started typing. My fingers moved before my thoughts caught up. Passwords, bank codes, verification texts. Within minutes, I'd transferred every cent I owned into a private account, one they didn't know existed, one they would never find. They thought I'd freeze in that hallway, too stunned to act. They thought I'd keep being the same quiet, dependable Katie who never made a scene. What they didn't know was that I'd been expecting this. For weeks, I'd seen the signs. The missing invitations, the clipped conversations, the way estate documents stopped being forwarded to my inbox. What they didn't realize was that I already knew about Grandma's second trust, the one they'd pretended never existed, the one that matured just 2 weeks ago. I shut the laptop and crossed the room to the dresser. My hands found the hidden key tucked beneath old scarves and an old photo of Grandma Eunice. Her smile faded, her eyes still sharp. I slid open the drawer and pulled out a single slip of paper written in her familiar, looping handwriting. One name, mine. It hadn't started with the trust. It started with smaller things. The group text I was accidentally left out of. The family photo Diane posted online, cropped just before my shoulder. The dinner Alina hosted where she toasted to family and never once looked my way. I told myself it was grief, that after Grandma's death, people act strange, that maybe I'd become a reminder of something they didn't want to face. Once I even apologized for being too much lately. No one corrected me. Looking back, I see now, it wasn't distance. It was rehearsal, a slow, deliberate erasing of my place in their story, one omission at a time. Alina had always been their favorite. Not because she demanded it, but because she performed it perfectly. She knew how to nod along when Diane talked about legacy. She learned Dad's business tone before she even had a job. She was the daughter they introduced at functions, the one with the polished smile and the room with the view. And me, I was the background, the helper, the invisible one. I was the one who balanced Grandma's books when her hands trembled too much to write, the one who drafted thank you cards when Diane couldn't be bothered, the one who kept everything running smoothly so they could pretend nothing was falling apart. I thought being good would be enough. But goodness in that family was currency they only spent on themselves. Alina was always 5 moves ahead, and Diane, she was playing a game no one else realized existed until it was too late. That smile I'd seen in the study, it wasn't new. I'd seen it at Christmas when I arrived with gifts only to learn dinner had been rescheduled without me. I'd seen it at Grandma's funeral when I gave the eulogy and no one clapped. Just a tight nod from Diane and the words, "That was brave." I just hadn't understood what I was seeing. Until now. I unfolded the note from Grandma's drawer again. The paper smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. The ink was still dark, deliberate. Beneath the writing, a small key was taped. I peeled it off and turned toward Grandma's old sewing desk. The lock turned with a quiet click. Inside were 3 items. The first, a thick legal envelope, embossed and sealed. Amendment to Last Will and Testament. My name appeared cleanly on every page, witnessed, notarized, dated 1 month before Grandma passed. My name, only mine. The second, a small voice recorder. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room, soft, steady, but strong enough to cut through years of silence. If they try to twist this, Katie, you show them this tape. I trust you, only you. It was only 23 seconds long, but it said more than Diane ever had in her entire life. The third, a handwritten note. 4 short lines in Grandma's slanted accountant's script. Blood doesn't make them worthy. If you're reading this, they've already turned on you. Take what's yours. Don't look back. I sat there for a long moment, staring until the words blurred, not from tears, but from understanding. Grandma had known, not just about the money, but about them, about how they'd twist loyalty into leverage, dress greed in family language, and call betrayal business. She'd seen through them long before I did, and she left me not just a gift, but a plan. I gathered everything, the envelope, the recorder, the note. I packed them neatly into my bag. By morning, I wasn't going to beg for a seat at the table anymore. I was going to bring the truth to it. The kitchen was already alive when I walked in. Alina perched at the end of the island, scrolling on her phone with her coffee in hand, legs crossed like someone who had already won. Dad was buried in spreadsheets, glasses sliding down his nose. Diane stood at the stove stirring oatmeal, humming that same light tune that made my skin crawl. None of them looked up when I entered. I reached into my bag, pulled out the manila envelope and laid it flat on the counter between the croissants and the contracts. Alina noticed first. Her eyes flicked from the envelope to my face, then narrowed. What's this? Dad didn't even glance up. We're in the middle of something, Katie. Can this wait? No, I said simply. You'll want to read this now. Diane turned, spoon still in hand, eyes catching on the seal. Her expression faltered, just slightly, but enough. Alina laughed under her breath. You brought your own paperwork? Is this some attempt to insert yourself again? I didn't answer her. I just opened the envelope and spread the amendment across the counter like a winning hand. Signed. Witnessed. Dated, I said calmly, tapping the line with my finger. You remember Beverly, Grandma's friend from the garden club? She was there. So was the notary. Dad's grip tightened around the arm of his chair. Diane's spoon trembled. Alina reached forward, but I stopped her hand midair. Don't, I said softly. You already know what this is. You don't get to act surprised now. The room fell silent. Not the comfortable kind, the hollow kind. The kind that comes when the truth rips open a lie that's been carefully built. I poured myself a glass of water, the sound of it echoing in the stillness. You've crossed a line, Diane said at last, voice sharp but shaking. This isn't what your grandmother intended. You're right, I replied. She intended honesty. She left that to me. Alina laughed, short, brittle. This is pathetic. You always hated being on the sidelines, and now you're turning her death into your performance. I smiled faintly. You mistake silence for obedience. Dad opened his mouth to intervene, but I cut him off. I set the small recorder on the table and pressed play. Grandma's voice filled the room again. If they try to twist this, Katie, you show them this tape. I trust you, only you. When it ended, the quiet that followed was heavy enough to touch. Diane stood frozen, her hands clenched. Alina stared into her coffee as if she could disappear into it. I reached into my bag once more and slid another envelope across the marble. Filed this morning, I said. An injunction to freeze the estate until the will is reviewed. Dad's jaw tightened. You're trying to dismantle this family. No, I said evenly. I'm refusing to let it dismantle me. I gathered the documents, tucked them back into my bag, and turned toward the hallway. No yelling, no grand farewell, just footsteps and the quiet click of finality. Let them sit in that silence. Let them wonder what else I had. As I stepped into the corridor, my phone buzzed. A message from my attorney. Injunction accepted. Funds are frozen. Pending review. You're in control of next steps. I exhaled slowly, turned off the recorder in my hand, and kept walking. I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was the executor of the truth. The elevator doors slid open to the executive floor of Maddox and Langley. The receptionist looked up, startled, then straightened instantly as I passed. I didn't pause. I walked straight into the boardroom where 5 of the senior partners were already seated, murmuring over financial projections and Q3 forecasts. Their conversation stopped when they saw me. Katie Thomas, the senior partner, squinted. "We weren't expecting you. You are now," I said, laying a folder onto the polished table. "As of last week, I hold controlling interest in the firm, 51%, assigned through the trust by Unu Nice Maddox, and now upheld through a notarized amendment. You'll find all documentation in there." Alina was already in her seat, arms crossed so tight her knuckles turned white. "This is a stunt." "No," I said, sitting at the head of the table. "This is succession." The room remained still until the door burst open. Rye walked in, breathing hard, cheeks flushed. "This is outrageous," he snapped. "You can't just I can," I said, calmly opening a second folder. "And I will, starting with transparency." I handed out copies of internal transaction reports, ones the old accounting team had conveniently buried. Page 3. I said Chase Maddox used corporate funds to cover personal gambling losses. Over $80,000 in expenses labeled client entertainment lead directly to his personal Venmo. Ray opened his mouth, but I wasn't finished. And page 5. Your LLC, Blue Ridge Advisory, listed as a vendor to the firm, except it doesn't provide consulting. It layers distributions from the estate through padded invoices. It's all there. Bank transfers, timestamps, even the shell corporation in the Caymans. Alina stood up so fast, her chair scraped against the wall. "You've been spying on your own family." I looked at her squarely. "I have been protecting what's left of Grandma's name." Thomas cleared his throat, glancing through the documents. "We weren't made aware of any of this." "You are now." Rye stared at me across the table, not with fury this time, but with something smaller, something unraveling. I didn't flinch because the nameplate in front of me no longer read guest. It read managing partner. The report came in at dawn. 112 pages of rot dressed in professional language and polished formatting. The forensic team had combed through 6 years of records. What they found didn't surprise me. It confirmed what I already knew. They hadn't just tried to cut me out. They'd been bleeding the foundation tree all along. A 6F-figure string of consulting fees traced back to an account in Alina's name, one she opened right after Grandma's first hospitalization. Dozens of fake invoices billed tow departments that didn't exist, equipment rentals that never arrived, shell companies registered to P.O. boxes in Florida, Delaware, and Zurich. And then the final piece, an offshore account teed directly to Diane, quietly named under a holding firm with no physical office. The lead investigator didn't even look shocked when he handed me the summary. "You've got enough to file," he said. "Criminal and civil." I nodded once. Then I forwarded the entire report to the legal team with one line in the email. "Proceed fully." By late morning, my attorney called. "We can file the charges today, but you need to be certain. This will be public loud." I said. "This isn't about vengeance. It's about respect for Grandma, for what she built, for what they were supposed to protect." He was silent for a moment, then said, "Understood. We'll initiate proceedings this afternoon." I ended the call and looked out the office window. Below, the city moved on without hesitation. People walking to coffee shops, glancing at their watches, unlocking front doors. That was the part they never understood. I never needed Towan to feel whole. I just needed Thales to stop. The report sat open beside me, page after page. I highlighted sections and left notes for the compliance team. I didn't flinch when I got to the numbers tied to my father's retirement fund. I didn't pause when Alina's signature showed up on falsified contracts, because healing doesn't mean staying quiet. It means telling the truth out loud on record with your name signed underneath it. And my name wasn't going away. It was just beginning to mean something again. The message came through just after noon, a simple text. 1 hour, no lawyers. You owe me that much. I didn't respond. I just showed up. The garden behind St. All was almost too quiet. The same bench where Onyuni used to sit during choir practice. The same flower beds Diane had once pretended to care for. Phone tucked behind her sunglasses, whispering to the estate planner while pruning roses. She was already there when I arrived. wearing white, clean lines, not a wrinkle in sight. She looked up as I approached and patted the space beside her on the bench. "I didn't sit. I have to hand it to you," she said softly, folding her hands in her lap. "I underestimated you. That was your first mistake," I said. "But not your last. You think this is about power?" Her voice remained gentle, unbothered. "I kept this family together, Katie. Every time your father faltered, I held the line. Every time Alina broke down, I steadied her. You were always the wild card. You wanted the truth, but didn't care how much it cost." I stepped closer, my voice low. "You didn't hold anything together. You controlled it. There's a difference." Her eyes flicked to mine. "A flicker of something? Grief? No, just calculation. Everything crumbles," she whispered. "Even the truth. You'll see. It starts slow then all at once." I studied her face. The calm was still there, but the certainty had cracks. She stood slowly, smoothing her dress like the conversation had gone the way she intended. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "But I do expect consequences." I said nothing. Not a word. Not a nod. I turned and walked down the stone path, leaving her behind with her silence. She didn't follow. Back at the office, I seen the final documents authorizing the testimony release. Every asset, every dollar, every name, and the courtroom date was already stamped on the calendar. The courtroom didn't feel cold, but something in the air made every breath heavier. I took the stand, swore my name under oath, and opened the folder I'd rehearsed in silence for months. I started with the basics, the dates, the discrepancies, the names tied to transfers they assumed would never be traced. I spoke evenly, no embellishment, no theatrics, just facts. Then I played the audio on Eunice's voice, clear and direct, echoing in the room. "If they try to twist this, Katie, you show them this tape. I trust you, only you." The judge nodded slightly but said nothing. I handed over Grandma's handwritten letter, her signature, her ink, 4 lines that cut through every defense they'd built. Alina took the stand next. Her tone was measured, sympathetic, practiced. "We were protecting the family legacy," she said. "We didn't want conflict. We wanted harmony." Katie was unstable. She wouldn't have known what to do with their responsibility. I didn't look at her while she spoke. I looked at the judge. When it was my turn again, I said it quietly but firmly. "Erasing someone isn't protection. It's cowardice dressed in silk." Alina flinched. Diane looked away. I finished with one final statement. "This isn't about inheritance. It's about being rewritten. I am not unstable. I'm not dramatic. I was inconvenient to their version of thestery, and I'm here to set it straight." The judge took a moment, then 2, then spoke. "The amended will stands. Full control of the estate remains with Ms. Katie Maddox. Any misuse of funds by Ms. Alina Maddox and Mr. Ray Maddox will be referred for further legal action. Ms. Diane Maddox is permanently removed from any fiduciary authority related to the trust." I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Outside, I walked past the reporters without answering a single question. Back in the car, I took out the small journal Anyish had left behind and flipped to the dog-eared page. The own that simply read, "Truth doesn't scream, it stands," and now so did I. The lake house was quiet again. No attorneys, no files, no echoes of courtroom doors closing behind me. Just the sound of water brushing against the dock and wind moving through trees. Oni's planted long before any of us had something to fight over. I took off my shoes at the door, walked through the narrow hallway to her old reading room, and sat in the chair she used every morning. Coffee in one hand, pen in the other. The journal was still there, just where I left it. Brown leather, worn edges. Her handwriting on every page, deliberate and unshaken. I flipped to the page I'd marked before the trial. The ink had faded slightly, but the words still rang louder than anything Alina or Diane had said in months. Sometimes blood must be drained for a body to heal. I read it again, not with grief this time, but with understanding. They tried to rewrite the story, cut me from it, say I was too emotional, too dramatic, too difficult. But all they really did was clear the path. They handed me the pieces. I just chose to build instead of break. I stood by the window and watched the light shift across the water. "They tried to bury me," I said aloud, voice steady. "But they handed me the shovel. I didn't dig a grave. I planted something. And when I turned back toward the hallway, I locked the door behind me, not to shut them out, not in anger, but to mark a line. This was where their version ended and mine began.